Hi everyone, it's Guillaume from Startup Basecamp. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. During the show, you will have the opportunity to meet the best climate tech founders, investors, and experts from both Silicon Valley and around the globe. They will share with you their stories and personal journeys into this growing and exciting industry, giving you some insight into the ecosystems that help you to take part in the fight against climate change and benefit from the opportunities it can represent. The podcast is divided in two small interviews. During the first part, you will get to know our speakers, their perspectives on the climate crisis and how climate tech is changing the game. The second part of the discussion will be for members of our community who will learn the speakers' secret sauce on how to and share with you their unique expertise on topics such as fundraising, management, strategy, and so on, to help you to become a better leader in your field. So before we start, I would like to quickly share what we are doing at Startup Basecamp to support climate tech founders in accessing resources and gaining visibility with investors they seek. Our initiatives include a membership-based community platform offering access to a dedicated Slack group with a growing number of founders, experts, and investors from around the world, and a series of exclusive content such as interviews, weekly job listings, events, and our quarterly online pitch of night opportunity. But more than a place where you can learn, exchange, and grow, we are building a matchmaking service to facilitate connections between our members and top investors and experts in the field. And soon, alongside with other top investors, we will be launching a small fund to co-invest in the growth and acceleration of our members. Finally, all of this is possible because of your support and donations. We are a small self-funded team, and we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. So please share one episode with a friend and subscribe to the channels. As an added bonus, we will plant a tree for each of our subscribers each time we reach 1,000 new fans or donors. Do not hesitate to connect with me via social media or email guillaume@startupbasecamp. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope to get in touch with you soon. And now, let's go for the show. Hi everyone, in today's episode we are speaking with Christina O'Conor, partner at Congruent Ventures. Congruent Ventures, who last year closed their second fund of 175 million, are helping create the climate startups that will positively impact how we move, create, eat, and live. Their focus areas are early-stage startups working in mobility and urbanization, the energy transition, food and agriculture, and sustainable production and consumption. I was excited to have Christina on the show, a climate-obsessed individual who has spent 17 years dedicated to the nexus of climate tech and finance. Prior to joining Congruent Ventures, Christina was one of the early employees at the UN's PRI, Principle for Responsible Investments, which is currently the largest global initiative for mainstreaming ESG issues into investment decision-making and ownership practices. Following this, Christina was head of ESG and sustainable development at Wellington Management, where she gained experience identifying feasible climate solutions. In this episode, Christina will share a view of the US climate tech ecosystem, the climate innovation pockets around the world which are ahead of the US, and the funding gap for early-stage founders. Then she will discuss the framework they create with founders of different metrics they can track related to their core KPIs. Together, we will go on to explore the climate tech sectors with promising impact cash returns and the areas she believes has excited potential for investment, growth, and impact. Following that, Christina will share her view on the climate crisis today, why sales channels and business models are important, and how you can be involved with Congruent Ventures today. In the second part of the show, Christina will give her secret sauce for founders looking to pitch to investors successfully and share why it is important to love what you do. Lastly, Christina will cover how she tackles challenges to maintain a healthy work-life balance and share a few inspiring leads for climate tech founders. Christina, welcome to the show. Hi Christina, welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. I'm super happy to have you here with us today. Again, an incredible woman moving the needle towards a better and cleaner world.
So super exciting, and I believe it's going to be a great opportunity today to hear your story and get up to speed on what you guys are looking at with Congruent Venture. Since the first time we met during one of our quarterly pitch competition. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Guillaume. Good to be here.
So before we start, as the usual suspect, could you please give us a 30-second introduction about Congruent Venture?
Sure. So, Congruent is focused entirely on climate tech and environmental sustainability. So, we invest at the earliest stage possible, so pre-seed and seed primarily. We also do Series A. And it's across all the various sectors under climate tech, which I can go into.
Definitely, we'll go more into details later on in the interview. So before that, as usual, we like to put the guest speaker in the center of the interview. So let's start from the top. Can you tell us a bit more about your personal story and background? What are you passionate about? What do you do besides working and supporting and investing in founders? I mean, what makes you feel inspired or like your best self? As I like to ask, who is Christina?
So, I've actually been obsessed with climate change since college. I actually wrote my papers on a cap and trade and carbon accounting. So I have actually dedicated my entire 17-year career to climate change and the nexus between that and finance. So prior to becoming an investor in climate tech, I was head of sustainable investment and ESG at Wellington in Boston for about 6 years. And prior to that, I actually worked at a nonprofit startup called the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, which started the whole movement of ESG. So that's, in a nutshell, my background. And when I'm not working, I'm a full-time mom. So I have a toddler who's a year and a half years old, a pandemic baby. But my husband and I live just north of San Francisco, so we do all the typical Marin type of stuff, like hiking and skiing and sailing and all that. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. So a lot of outdoor adventures and with your toddler now because if it's like a year and a half. And I personally have one as well. She was born on January 2020, so I know what it means to go through all of that together. So uh, tell us a bit more about this work and life experience that you just mentioned in terms of your background prior Congruent Ventures. I mean, what did you learn during that journey that gave you an edge to join the firm and even become a partner?
So while I was at Wellington, we focused a lot on engaging with companies. So we met with about 300 companies a year, and typically at the senior management level. So CEOs, COOs, typically, the folks that were actually making the decisions on whether or not they would make their companies more sustainable. So that was so much fun in my late 20s and early 30s to get to meet those folks. Um, and that gave us insights into what's actually feasible. So a lot of these CEOs would tell our team that there weren't any low cost tech solutions to solve the problems they were asking them to solve. And for the most part, that was actually true. And so that's what motivated me to leave Wellington and get my MBA at MIT before joining the climate tech space. But I think it's really that those conversations with the largest companies in the world on sustainability that's been super helpful.
Based on all of those conversation, and I would say like this whole journey that you had, did you have like any like specific haha moments that you can recall or would define as such that in a way was the driver for you to jump into this more climate tech ecosystem, or probably was a little bit clean tech before that? Any specific moment that you can recall?
Yeah. So, well, I can't name any company names, but there are, certain oil and gas companies where we meet with their entire boards. And there were some aha moments where they would literally list certain technology that they needed that did not exist at all. And at the same time, I was going to school at MIT, and I was sitting in on classes in robotics, and we started a class on AI at Sloan. And the sort of aha moment was that these two worlds, climate tech and deep tech, or whatever you want to call it, tough tech, should really come together. And that's actually how you can make the low cost solutions to solve a lot of these challenges.
Okay, so that was like the time where you felt really like, okay, this is where I want to put my time and effort into that cause. So let's zoom out and take a step back at US climate tech ecosystem. I mean, you are completely navigating into it right now since a couple of years or even more. Can you give us your overview of the landscape today in terms of like fundings, tech, and ongoing research, maybe structure to support the growth of new solutions? I mean, where are we at today? Is it still the genesis, or you see that it's getting a bit more maybe mature?
Yeah, so I wasn't around, or I wasn't an investor for the clean tech 1.0 that everyone talks about. So, our managing partners, Josh and Abe, can talk a lot about Clean Tech 1.0 and all the challenges that came with that. So people kind of refer to this as Clean Tech 2.0, but it's obviously much broader than that. So climate tech involves, not just renewable energy, but really anything from making manufacturing processes more efficient to sustainable food and ag. So from my perspective, I joined the whole climate tech venture capital space about 4 years ago. And at that time, there weren't that many funds. I remember having like a list of like 12 VCs that I was going around and speaking to. So now that list is a lot longer. You have an enormous amount of capital that's come in, particularly in the past year, which I'm sure you know. You're probably interviewing most of them. So I think that's super helpful. What we try to do is really stay focused on the pre-seed and seed stage. So we still see a bit of a gap in funding at the earliest stages. There's a ton of climate tech funds that are going at Series A and beyond. So that early stage is really important for us. But in the broader ecosystem, there's so many other ways of getting capital. So you have all of the grants coming out of DOE and other groups and accelerators. I feel like every month I hear about a new accelerator focused on some vertical of climate tech. For example, I mentor this one group on autonomous vehicles, which we actually do a lot of that type of work as well. So yeah, I feel like the whole space is just developing in both on the equity and the debt side.
Yeah, and I saw like I think for 2021 we're more like 40 billion plus in VC investments only in climate tech. So I think it's a very big jump compared to the previous year. But at the US in general, I mean, do you think that the US is still at the forefront compared to the EU or the rest of the world? And what do you think? I mean, what's the US advantage and maybe weaknesses to decarbonize the economy?
So that's a great question. I do still think the US is the forefront, but I do see various pockets around the world developing their expertise over the US. We just happen to have noticed there's a number of climate and crypto types of companies coming out of Switzerland, for example. So, like the core ones are actually based in Europe, as far as we've seen. I do think it'll develop more here in that space, but I think a lot of like the robotics and AI, those developments are there's pockets all around the world. So we actually only invest in the U.S. or in Canada, so North America startups. So I don't actually speak to as many European or other startups based other ways.
Yeah, yeah. But do you think that the decarbonization of the US economy in itself, and we all know that with China, US is one of the top in terms of like carbon emitters in itself, and the whole economy in a way needs to be decarbonized. Do you feel that the general market in itself start to get more and more ready for this decarbonization acceleration, or there's still a lot of like dead weight that in a way it's more like something that happened on the east or the west coast, and maybe Miami and Texas, and the center is not up to the challenge for now?
Well, it's tricky. If you compare a lot of places in the US to major cities in Europe, it feels a little bit behind in terms of EV charging, for example. and lots of smart city technology. But so I think it's just a matter of time that like the funding coming down from the federal government is going to be super helpful. So I think we'll catch up.
So with the goal in mind to keep, to 1.5 degrees overall temperature increase by 2050, which is according to you like the proportion between tech enabled solution versus nature-based solution that needs to be implemented. I mean, we often hear also that, and I'm part of this world of like technology can help a lot. But according to you, do you believe that both can work together, or we really need more one than the other?
So I think it's definitely both. There's definitely a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can work on. Saul Griffith mentions the 1 billion devices in our homes that need to be electrified. So he tells folks to focus on megaton as opposed to gigaton carbon projects. But I think we need everything. Like the Drawdown book is amazing. Talks about existing solutions in addition to new solutions that are needed. We are looking at nature-based solutions as well. For example, one of our companies called Climb Robotics is an in-field biochar company that is creating carbon offsets through biochar. So yeah, all of the above.
Thank you so much for giving you a bit more like the overview of the general context that you are navigating on in the US today. So let's go back to the specifics of Congruent Ventures. Can you let us know more about like the story, the genesis behind it? I mean, who founded the firm, and maybe what was the initial gap they saw that led to the thesis behind Congruent?
Sure. So the firm was created in 2017 by Josh Posamentier and Abe O'Kell. So Josh actually left Prelude Ventures, where he was an investor, and realized that there was a gap in the pre-seed seed stage. So the understanding was that he would leave to do the even earlier stages than Prelude for the most part. And Abe actually worked at Rockport Capital for a very long time. And so he saw that whole like clean tech 1.0. He's been involved in the space for decades. And so they came together to form the fund. And the idea was that they would stay focused on the very earliest stages and try to attract capital from mainstream VCs for the Series A and B and beyond. And so that's kind of stayed true to what we're doing.
Fantastic. And what do you offer to founders you invest in? I mean, compared to other funds, and maybe what are the challenges that you see that are specific to them at the early stage, pre-seed seed, as you do know?
Sure. So we have invested in about 43 companies across our two funds by now. And we actually typically lead the rounds, but we don't have to. We can also follow on. And so we sit on a fair number of boards and really try to help these companies, everything from like network to strategy to fundraising, next rounds. So we're really actively involved in our companies.
And if I may ask, you mentioned 43 investments. I guess now there are a lot of them, or probably a big part of it, Series A and plus, so they kind of like leave the nest, and you guys let them keep growing. So how many like companies are you able to follow like that? Because must be sometimes very intensive if there's a crisis and issues and stuff that you need to solve.
It is, yeah. We actually just hired a couple more folks to help us out. It does. It's definitely time consuming. When you're on a board, you're texting with the founders every week, all the time, and it's a lot of fun. I think that's actually the most fun part is to try to help these founders create the businesses.
So can you give us maybe some example of your previous investment that you personally were involved? I mean, maybe we can mention really one or two. What makes them special? Was it like the team, the market, the tech? I mean, how do you source or find those founders and those team? Who should come to pitch you?
Yeah, sure. So one of our companies is called Alloy Enterprises, and they are an additive manufacturing company that creates aluminum cast parts. So instead of the traditional powder-based way of creating aluminum, parts is actually, they use a thermal bonding process, and this is obviously for lightweighting vehicles, so it replaces steel, which is a huge reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, as you know. That one, we actually found it through one of my friends who's a PhD, was a PhD at MIT in micrometallurgy. He mentioned it to me, and then it was also on a list at Greentown Labs. Huge fans of Greentown Labs. So that one is super interesting in the sustainable production space for us. And then another one is called Dispatch Goods, which is a circular marketplace for reusable packaging. So food containers for food delivery, direct-to-consumer food brands. You can actually reuse all of the packaging. So I sit on the board of that one. I could go on and on. We love all of our companies, but
No, for sure. But maybe for this last one, what was exciting? What was I would say this special things that made okay, now we want to invest in and really support that company financially, but also as you mentioned, with all the help that you can provide by sitting on the board. What was this special gold nugget that makes okay, this is a special one?
Yeah, so we typically invest at the stage where it's two people and an idea, and it's really about the founders. I mean, I know everybody says that, but it really is.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So we like to spend a lot of time getting to understand how the founders think. And so we'll have them go through their pitch deck and we'll ask questions. But then the second call is usually on unit economics, techno-economic analyses, sales channel, et cetera, because we want to know how they think about all the challenges that are going to come up and to really understand how they will actually execute. So that's a huge portion of the decision.
So it's really this, in a way, I would say the level of maturity of the founders as well, I guess.
Exactly.
So let's step back a little bit and I'd like to get your opinion on which sector are the most promising for you today in terms of what I call the impact cash return, or ICR. This means building impactful companies while creating highly profitable business. Do you see any underdogs, subsectors, area that you're super excited about? And maybe we can check through the categories that you guys are doing with Congruent, which is mobility urbanization, or energy transportation, food and ag, or production and consumption. Any gold nuggets that other investors should look at?
Yeah, sure. So we do a lot of the nexus between AI and robotics and climate tech. So I think one that a lot of folks know us by is AMP Robotics, which is an AI-guided robotic system for sorting through trash. That one's really interesting. In the energy transition, we have invested in a lot of companies there, actually. So SPAN is a smart residential electrical panel. Amply is EV charging for fleets. We've done long duration energy storage, Fervo. Food and ag, we've invested in Meaty, which is a healthy alternative meat made from mycelium. We've done a couple of deals in the wildfire space. So one is actually an AI platform using 360 cameras that can help utilities and other folks detect wildfires at rapid speed, almost real time, so they don't actually become mega fires. We've also invested in a company that is exploring a robotic system for thinning the forest so that the fires don't become mega fires. And then, robotic systems for indoor greenhouses. In the mobility and urbanization, we invested in a company called Parallel Systems, which is electrifying.
But out of all of that, and I know speaking with different investors and funds, everybody is always looking on what's next, or what is the subsectors or area that is that they're doing kind of what they call a deep dive into it, to kind of understand where we could have an impact, but at the same time that is in a way less popular than director captures or others that can be more buzzy. What is the area right now where you're very excited about? That is not very popular, maybe.
Yeah, so it feels as if there are a few other, well, most climate tech funds are looking at crypto and climate. So we're spending a lot of time there. Um, Off-road autonomous vehicles in agriculture, manufacturing processes, uh, yeah, and then carbon offset markets. Spending a lot of time looking at offtake platforms, and then all different types of carbon markets and specific like nature-based solutions or other solutions.
So you mentioned that you guys invested in 43 investments. So I guess you probably heard like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 founders pitching you. And maybe it's more. I don't know what's the ratio in terms of number of pitch that you listen to decide to invest in one company. But out of all of the one that you heard, in your opinion, which are the maybe a solution that you believe makes zero sense whatsoever and sounds to be just a waste of maybe time and resource or maybe greenwashing? Do you have any example without naming any company, maybe?
Uh, I It would be hard for me to give an example without maybe some folks knowing which startup it is.
Okay.
So I'll respectfully pass on that question. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. But sometimes it's always interesting to hear like what is the something that should not be like a VC-backed company. But anyway, thank you for being very respectful of each founder that passed by in front of you. So, how do you measure impact? In comparison to other funds. I don't recall that you guys are mentioning any specific criteria in terms of CO2 emission. Some funds are like, yeah, we just invest in companies that have the capabilities to remove maybe 100 megaton or gigaton and so forth. What are the criteria for you guys in terms of like impact? Do you have a specific process or maybe a framework? Do you rely on scientists, experts? What is how does it work?
So you're correct. We don't have a certain CO2 threshold before we invest. So as long as the companies hit the certain sectors and areas that we're looking for, and we know that they will decarbonize those industries, then it's fair game for us. And in terms of the framework, once we invest, we do actually have a framework. So we created our first impact report last year, and our next one is coming out in a couple of weeks. It'll be publicly available on our website. And so we work with our startups to create a framework of the different metrics that they can track related to their core KPIs. And so our goal is to one day be able to portray that across every single startup. But a lot of our startups are fairly young. Some are pre-revenue, so it obviously doesn't quite make sense quite yet. But then in terms of projecting the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions, that is an interesting project called Project Frame, which I'm sure you've heard of, that Prime Coalition is working on with a number of other VCs. And that I think is going to be very valuable to try to project the total greenhouse gas emissions that these startups could avoid at scale.
Last question, and maybe if you're not okay to answer to that, you let me know. But what's your opinion regarding the Ukrainian political situation right now and this terrible news and related to again this climate change issues that is where the magnitude of problem in the future will be even further. We just came out of a COVID situation. We are now facing for part of that part of Europe like this terrible situation. What's your opinion on that? Like, should we stop everything? Are we going crazy? Are we going to lose so much time and effort on that? What's your opinion?
So I don't think that we have to stop the work on climate change when various wars and conflicts arise. I think that it's the efforts on the Ukraine war is extremely important. My sister is involved in refugee crises. So I think that it's extremely important to work on that. But climate change is something that can actually fuel a lot of conflicts as well around the world. And so if we don't address it, to me, it's not just a long-term issue. It's also an existing short-term issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for giving your opinion on that. So, how can the community of founders, investors, LPs listening to the show can help you today?
Well, I'd be happy to chat with them. So, yeah, we're always looking to meet new people. Even if you're not a founder, if you run an accelerator or nonprofit, we're learners at heart. So, always happy to meet other folks.
Fantastic. Any question that I should have asked and I did not for this first part of the interview?
No, you covered a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina, for your time and your incredible insights on the industry. I'm so excited to see so many brilliant women and people like you putting so much effort to move the ball towards a better and cleaner world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, it's Guillaume again. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. As I said, do not hesitate to share an episode with a friend. Also, if you value the work we do for the climate tech ecosystem, here is how you can contribute to it. Today, I'm asking for your support and a donation or sponsorship to make the work of our self-funded team more viable. Even a small contribution means a lot to us. In any case, I will invite you to subscribe to our channels and visit our website startupbasecamp.org to discover more episodes like this one. And get your membership to access all our members' exclusive content. So remember, all of this is possible because of your support and donation. And we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. Let's keep in touch, and I hope you will enjoy our next show with us.